Hi, this is Edward Troxel. In this script, we're going to learn how to render from Premiere using a script. The process is a little more complicated than it might need to be because first of all we have to set up some presets, and then we have to learn how to use the screen to select the preset we want to use. And then there are several more steps along the way, but that is as far as we're going to go in this video. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do is create an export format. We need to create an EPR file for each of the formats we want to export. So what I've done is created me a dummy project here, just added the clip to the timeline so that when I go to File, Export, Media, it will open up and give me options to select from. So let's select a few options here to create some presets. First one, let's do an AVI. Let's do an NTSC DV widescreen, and we're going to leave all the settings the same, except I'm going to uncheck export audio, then I'm going to recheck export audio. That way our preset now says custom, and I can save it under a custom name. So let me click on Save Preset. It says copy of NTSC DV widescreen. I am going to change that to NTSC DV widescreen, and then I'm going to add a dash script so that I know that that's one of my presets that I've created. And we'll click on OK. Now we have an NTSC DV widescreen dash script. Next thing I'm going to do is pick another format. So let's come down here and let's try MPEG-2 DVD. I'm going to pick NTSC DV widescreen. I'm going to uncheck the audio, recheck the audio, tell it to save, and we're going to get rid of copy of. And here I'm going to add MPEG-2 and then script so that I know that it's one that I created. Then let's do one more. Let's try an H.264. And let's come down and let's just choose YouTube 1080p. Uncheck export audio, recheck it so that we get a custom in the name, then I can save it again, and then once again we'll add dash script at the end of this one, and we'll click on OK. Now that we have the presets created, we need to write the script that will look for that preset and give us an option to choose it. To do that, we're going to start with the script that we worked with in the last video. In the last video, we created this Premiere test with form. So what I'm going to do now is copy that, paste it, and I think I'll call this JETDV render. So now we have all the files that we had from the last time already listed here, and we can start editing this to be our new render script. First thing I need to do is start Visual Studio Code. Once Visual Studio Code is open, we want to go to File, Open Folder. Then we will go down to Drive C. All of our test scripts are in Test Script, and we want to open the JETDV render folder that we just created. Now we can see all of our files listed over here on the left, and we need to start working on changing those so that we'll be able to read which of one of the presets we want to use. So let's first go into our manifest. In our manifest, we want to change this from being our test script to now being our JETDV render program. Let's come up here, let's change this com.adobe whatever, and we're going to change that to JETDV render. We need to come down here to extension ID. We'll select that whole thing, paste that, and it's once again listed down here. Change that to JETDV render. Scroll down, we see that that's not listed anywhere else. So let's come up here, let's change this name, and let's just call this JETDV render script. And then down here, I'm going to change it down here so that it says JETDV render script. Let's leave the height at 300, but let's change the width to 500. That way it'd be a little wider for us to put our text in. Our version up here, well, let's change this to 1.0.0.0. So this should be all the changes we need to make in the manifest file for it to go ahead and work. It's still going to reference our index.html and our extend script.jsx. It's going to be called JETDV render script in the menu. So I'm going to save that, and I'll go ahead and close that file because we are done with it for the moment. Now let's go into our index.html. We need to change our title to match what we're doing now. So we'll change this to JETDV render script. We're still going to be referencing this CS interface, so that's fine. We are still going to be doing this, but we're going to be doing it slightly different. This line will probably change. This line will remain the same, except for we will change what the text is at some point down the road. But for right now, let's just create what we're going to need to be able to search for the preset that we're going to use. So first of all, let's create a new button up here. Button. When I close that, it automatically puts the close button thing here. The text for this button is going to be select the render preset. Now let's set the properties for this button. Remember, this is an HTML page, and an HTML page really does not like to be able to give you folders or files on your hard drive, because if you did that and a web page had access to that information, it could be a definite security risk. So to simplify the process here, I'm not going to even try to access the file or the folder from this web page. I'm going to go ahead and ask the script over on the Premiere side to give me that information and then send that back to me. For our button, we're going to add an on-click, and we are going to do a select file, and I'm going to write the select file in such a way that I could use it multiple times if I need to. So I'm going to pass it some parameters. So let's have our open bracket here, and we'll put a single quote, select the render preset file. And that's what I want the name of the dialog box to be when it pops open in Premiere. Then I'm going to pass it the ID of what it's going to be placed in on this screen, which is going to be our next line of code. I'm going to use an ID of single quote preset file, and then unquote, and then we'll close our bracket. So now that that line's done, let's look at the next line, which is where we're actually going to put the data, which is going to have that ID. So on this line, we're just going to make it a standard P line for a paragraph. And for right now, the text is going to say no file selected. So that will be the initial value. It'll be no file selected. So let's do some formatting here. First of all, its ID is going to be preset file. And then we're going to change its color to white so that we can actually see this text. So style equals color and white. So we've created a button to select the text, and then the file name that we find is actually going to be listed right here where it says no file selected. So now what we need to do is create this select file routine. That's going to be done up here in this script section. So let's go down and create a new function, which is going to be called select file. We are going to pass two pieces of information to it. That's the dialog text, which I'll just call that, and the ID that we want to pass this back to. This is going to be a fairly small function. Basically, we're just going to call the extend script inside. The call for this, first of all, we have to create our variable. CS equals new CS interface, and then we need to call the command we are going to run, cs.eval script, and here's what we pass it. We're going to run the $run script.select file routine, and then we're going to pass it something that begins with a quote, and then we're going to send the dialog text, and then the ending quote, and then a comma, and then another quote, and then we're going to go ahead and send the ID to it so it can be passed over and sent back. And then our ending quote and our ending parentheses. Then after we pass the command, it is going to have to call something to send the information back to us. And something that it's going to call is going to be get file function. The get file function is actually another routine that we're going to put right here in the HTML file. So now let's come down here and let's go ahead and create that. So function get file function, and it's going to pass back the data from the extend script. I'm going to send back two pieces of data. The first piece of data is going to be the ID that we sent over so that we can get the ID in this routine too. The second piece of information is going to be the actual file that was selected. So now let's split the information into the two pieces. So we're going to do data.split, and since this is a rarely used character, I'm going to use that one right there, and that will split it up into its pieces. Then I'm going to find the element, and that's the document.getElementById, and the ID I'm looking for is in the first piece, which will be piece number 0. So it'll be pieces 0. And then we're going to set the information into that paragraph. So the inner HTML is going to be the other piece, number 1. So now we have the index side set so that we can, on the click of this button, we will call this routine. It'll send these two pieces of information over to the extend script. The extend script will ask for the file name, and it will send the ID and the file name back in these two pieces, and then this information here will be updated. So now let's go over to our extend script. Our extend script, we're going to be getting rid of most of this stuff down here at some point. I'm going to leave it alone for today, but we're going to add our new files up here in this run script. When you have multiple functions up here, they have to be separated by commas. So we're going to start with a comma, and then we're going to add our select file routine up here. So our select file routine is going to be called select file, and this is a function. This function is going to be passed two pieces of information. First of all is the dialog text, and second of all is the ID. First thing we're going to do is get the output path of the file. So var, create a new variable, the file to use, and that's going to be file.openDialog, and then we're going to use the dialog text to define what text is displayed at the top of the screen. Then we are going to return the ID plus this character plus, and then the file and the FS name of that file. So we return back the path of the file after passing the ID. Now let's save all this. File, save all. We go into our test scripts, and we have our JETDV render right here. We're going to copy this over into our program files, x86, common files, Adobe, CEP, extensions. To copy the folder, instead of moving the folder, I always right click and drag, and then it gives me the copy and move options. I want to continue. Okay, all of those files have now been copied over. So now we need to open Premiere again so that it can see that new script has been added. Then we open our Untitled project. We go to Windows, Extensions. You can see we now have a new project listed here. Notice it says no file is selected, and we have a button here that says select the render preset. So we can now click on that. As we discussed last time, you can see this is blinking down here. That means our select box is actually behind the Premiere screen. And you might wonder, okay, where are those presets at? Let's go to My Documents. Then we're going to go to Adobe. We're going to go to Media Encoder. Let's go to the most current version. Let's go to Presets, and you will see that our presets are all listed here. So let's say that I wanted to do the YouTube upload. I could then click on OK, and now it says that our full path is this right here, and it is pointing to our youtube.epr file. So that's how we can create a renderer and choose which one we want to use. By creating the renderers, you can have multiple ones to choose from, And by being able to choose it on the screen, we can easily pick which one we want to use. So in the future videos, we're going to continue building on this script and actually get the renderer to work. Please sign up at www.jettv.com and subscribe on YouTube to get further notifications on when new videos are presented.